Hello, and thank you for joining me for this Higher Purpose podcast episode. I'm Joseph Mertz, the founder and CEO of Sterling Group. Last night we were joined by Rebecca Grainger, and Rebecca's an amazing mother, and she's making waves where it counts. With 1 in every 2 women experiencing pregnancy discrimination at work, Rebecca actually being one of them, she's made it her mission to transform the way we all think about parental leave. And you'll probably notice that this episode is a slightly different format to our usual higher purpose sessions. This was meant to be much more conversational. We wanted to hear the opinions and experiences of everyone who attended. I hope you enjoy it.
Hello, thank you all for coming out in such miserable weather. I really do appreciate it. I certainly don't want it to be me preaching to you at all tonight. I think parental leave certainly appears to be a topic which is companies are highlighting that it's a key differentiator for them. So I think tonight would be great if we could share our collective wisdom, understand what challenges we're going through as HR leaders or in businesses or as managers, understand what maybe employees are going through, what they're saying, and then maybe share what are other people doing. I've spoken to lots of organisations in the process of researching what Trio needs to look like, which is a communication workflow and keeping in touch platform. So I can certainly share some of the things that have come through from that research. I've given you all sort of a high level survey results in your pack. But let's just have an open conversation about what's happening in this space, what's preventing us from moving forward, or what challenges are we facing, what problems do we have, and what are other people doing here that can maybe help solve these issues for other people. It is being recorded, so if there's something that you want to discuss which you don't want on record and to be shared just privately within the group, we can just let us know, and we will cut those pieces out of the recording. So what I thought, just as a starting point, maybe I'll just go back. I do have a recruitment background, and then when I became pregnant, I actually experienced pregnancy discrimination. So I left at 4.5 months pregnant. Obviously, you can't find a job at 4.5 months pregnant, so I set up a career coaching business, which is Mama Hub, coaching women on the transition from corporate to maternity and back into work. The back into work piece happened to be finding them new jobs. And the stories were all the same. They were disengaged, they were disconnected, they'd been treated in their eyes badly, been made redundant on maternity, had experienced discrimination. And to me, this was crazy. I'd spent over a decade recruiting for companies who were asking me to put women on the shortlist, and yet here were these awesome, professional, ambitious women who'd had babies, and just because they'd had a family had felt like they'd been written off. Yet companies were therefore losing this key talent at the peak of their career after they'd made such a huge investment in their acquisition. And that's really how Trio has come about, to bridge that gap. And in the research that we've been doing for Trio, it's really been identified one of the key failings is the manager. They don't know what to do, when, how, or why, so they tend to do nothing. And then when people go on leave, they're out of sight, out of mind. Now, for some women, that's perfect. They don't want to be contacted. But for a large proportion of women, they do want to still keep in touch and feel that they still belong. And for anyone who's had a baby, certainly first time baby, when you go from being a sort of professional corporate woman into motherhood, I call it falling off a cliff. You really change, like your life changes, and we change, and we have to therefore find a new identity. And if your career has really defined you, to have no contact is actually quite lonely. So what we're doing at Trio is really bridging that gap. We're communicating with the managers, telling them what to do, when, how, and why, with pre-scripted emails for them to send on to the employee. So we mitigate the risk of them saying or doing something wrong. We also inform the employee along the journey of what's happening. So we're trying to increase their engagement and empowerment through this journey from pregnancy announcement to a year after returning to work. So if we just talk to some of these, which we're all now this way, so you can't see, but some of the statistics that have really come to mind through all this research is, in terms of women, 76% want to return to work. Yet of those that do, 30% leave within the first year. So what I found is that companies measure their retention rates, but they don't measure their attrition rate in that first year. And then the other statistic was that 3 in 5 move into lower paid or lower skilled roles. Predominantly this is driven by needing flexibility. So it's not that they lack ambition or they don't want to stay in the same level role or the same challenging role. In fact, women openly will say, if I'm going to be away from my child, I want to be stimulated and challenged. Yet companies aren't making that available to them. Mm-hmm. So again, shall we just sort of start talking about these statistics first, and how do you find that within your organisations? Is that, are these things measured? Are they not? Is retention perceived to be an issue? Or
I had an experience, I've only been in my company since February, and I had an experience where an employee was contacting, she was on mat leave when I started, and I was like, when she's coming back, I was talking to her manager, and she kept sending me emails and he just kept ignoring them. So she ended up calling up reception, because I was a different HR person, asking who was in HR, speaking to me, and I sorted it all out. And I even did her return to work. I did the 3 days a week for 2 months, graduated to 4 days. She only wanted to work 4 days. The manager was kind of stuck his head in the sand, and I don't know, he's got kids, I don't understand it. He was like, I need 5 days, or not at all. And it got to the point where I had to escalate it to the GM, who we both report to, because he said no and I said yes.
Yeah.
And he said, I would like to think that you're supporting people returning from maternity leave, and why can't you have her 3 days a week for a couple of months? It's better than nobody.
Yeah.
Because the girl that was in her role had left, so he had nobody. He was snowed under, but his idea was, I need 5 days or not at all. Yeah, he had 3 kids himself, so I was like, isn't 0.6 better than 0? And I had to really get in his head and go, and then he went, oh, she's too junior. And I went, but she worked for you before she went on that leave. And he's like, but I need someone more senior now, and I need them 5 days a week. I was like, what?
That's very challenging.
So we were like, the GM and I were very like, we will help you coach her. She's not junior. He just had in his head, she's had a baby now, she can't do her old job. Yeah. And that's why he said junior. She's had a baby, so she can't do her old job, so I want someone else. Which is really awful. And he's got kids, so you think he'd know. He's got 3 kids.
What was the outcome though? Did he take her back?
Yeah, and he's glad. I said the other day, aren't you glad you took her? He's like, yeah, she's amazing. I missed her. She's so organised. I'm not organised. She's really helping me.
Yeah.
But it was in his head. She's had a baby, so she's got no brains now. I need someone who's got brains, like, you know.
Yeah, automatically written off with no evidence that she's going to become incapable.
So the little boy's, I don't know, 10 months old now, and I met him. He's lovely, and he's got twins that are about 4. Plus another daughter who's about 6. So I was like, he's got kids.
Yeah.
But in his head, I need someone 5 days a week, and she's had a baby now, so I just need someone else for 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Does his wife work? Do you know?
I'm not sure. I think so, because he does a lot of the pick-up drop-off, so I guess she must work, otherwise she would just do it all.
Yeah.
So maybe his experience as a father has not been a positive one with a working wife.
Yeah, maybe she had to go back to work 5 days a week, and he has to leave work early to get the kids.
And so he thinks, oh my gosh, somebody else is going to be going through that. I know what it's like, and he's probably projecting.
Because in the end, he was like, yeah, it's amazing, she's really helped me out, I forgot how organised she is, she's going really well. And it's all been positive, but in his head, he needed someone 5 days a week, and he wasn't budging.
That one's a good case study for the rest of the business.
Yeah.
Yeah. And great that you kind of stuck your heels in and said no, like, let's, because otherwise she could have been out or demoted.
Well, and they're doing a bit of restructure in that team, so we were not sure if we needed a part-time or full-timer. And just because of when she was due back, we haven't finished the restructure, so we can't go, sorry, you've got to take more mat leave till we finish the restructure. Like, that's not fair either.
No.
And so at the end of this month, she goes back to 4 days a week because she just wanted to ease back into it, and her partner takes that 5th day off and works from home so he can mind the baby.
Yeah.
And she didn't want to put a baby in daycare 5 days a week because she wanted to be a mum.
Yeah.
And for him to expect her to do that when his wife doesn't do that was really weird. So, yeah, I think it was just a perception in his mind. Maybe you're right. I want someone 5 days a week and I can't entertain anything except that. And I sort of had to get inside his head because I didn't know him very well.
Yeah.
Try and work out why he wouldn't do 3 days a week.
Could he articulate it?
No, he didn't know why either. All he kept saying is she's too junior. I think he was just really strung out, really stressed out, and he just wanted someone senior to take some of his workload off him. And so he had another 4-day-a-week lady reporting to him. I got her to step up to 5 days till the end of the year, and we're paying her the 5th day. So I sent him a note the other day and I said, you used to have 0.4 and now you've got 0.8, so you've doubled your workforce. And he sent back a little smiley face. He said, you should be an accountant. I said, funny you should say that, I was before I got into HR.
Winning.
So he went from 0.4 to 0.8 and he's not stressed anymore.
Yeah.
That is a great case study for the organisation, and I guess it's part of that is, the concept of all roles flex. The more flexibility becomes the norm, those kind of issues become redundant because, that shouldn't be an issue.
And we're only a small company, like most of it's production, so we're probably about 100 salaried people and the rest 250 in the plant.
Yeah.
But I thought, if this is how they're treating someone in the office, how would they treat someone coming back to work on a manufacturing line with a baby,
Yeah.
I could probably talk to that. I work for a stevedoring company, and we have parental leave. And a few years ago, I had a female employee approach me saying she was pregnant, and we then put her on suitable duties. So she is a stevedore, she operates heavy machinery, and then she went on her mat leave and then was returning. And we put on a flexible work arrangement, so providing her days off, extra opportunities to make herself unavailable. And the workforce actually said, well, before you know it, you're going to have everyone wanting flexible work arrangements. So I said, well, no, we're going to look at each individual case. And this person has come back on mat leave. Why would I stop her from having the opportunity to earn money, but also look after their child? And 3 years down the track, it's become a norm. Where I've got not only females but male employees who are on flexible work arrangements, allowing them to look after their kids. So
that's cool.
And
that's
so
brilliant.
it's been a very positive experience.
Especially
But
in
first,
the
it was
industry as well, to have men taking parental leave as well. It's definitely a big culture shift.
Yeah, for sure.
And so IFAs as part of your EVA, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a good outcome.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. So we just work their roster, and some of them, they normally their partners have gone back to work, either part time or full time. We're able to juggle that.
Do you think because it's male dominated, a bit like manufacturing, that they're a bit you're pandering to the girl? Yeah.
But they've realised
she's got it, we want it.
Everybody.
Yeah.
And we haven't had a flood of 600 people wanting it. So
Well, generally people want full-time income, don't they, to pay their bills?
Yeah, you're not going to get a massive bunch of people just getting pregnant to get some huge opportunities.
Definitely not as men. That would be a difficult one to I'm working on it.
I wanted to find out, because I've never observed everyone over the last, say, 5-6 years, whatever I've worked, never really known anybody to take the full 12 months or worse, not worse, that's more word, more so extend it to ask for another additional. So I just wondered if anyone else has had that experience, because I haven't come across anyone taking that second year.
Most people come back early because they get to have the 9-month mark and realise the net income. But I have had someone that did extend for 12 months and then resigned at the end of the second 12 months.
Okay.
Because I think it was their second or their third baby and they just realised they wanted to stay home and be a stay-at-home mum.
I had somebody who had twins. So it was just, she's like, I need more time. And I went, yeah, and probably a drink.
Didn't she want to come to work for a rest?
So, but she said that, she was missing being part of the office, but she did need more time. And I said, well, I have no problem. If you want to come into a meeting once a month just to kind of put the kids in with your parents, and just come in and hang out and have adult talk, sure, why not? Yeah, she did it. I had somebody else who took her full year, came back, and within 2 months, she was really, really upset. And I came, and I'm like, what's wrong? She's like, I have to talk to you. I'm like, okay, maybe she's, she can't do it. It's been 2 months. She's been back. And she went, it's happened again. And I went,
oh, 2 months later.
Cool. It wasn't planned. She's like, no, and now I know you're going to be really upset with me? And I'm like, why? Because you had sex. And after having the first one, you should have known what was going to happen. The second one.
So should we have a chat?
And then she's like, and then I thought if I was breastfeeding.
Too much information to get.
And so she was really concerned. She's like, I don't. Is it okay if I take another 12 months? With this one? And I'm like, yeah, I'll see you when you get back. And just kind of worked with it. And when she did come back finally, she came back at 4 days a week. But I found that she was so excited to be able to come back and still have her job and still be doing exactly what she was doing beforehand.
Yeah.
That I got well more than 4 days worth of work out of her because she'd go home at night.
Yeah.
She'd put the kids to bed and she'd do work that she would normally have been doing because she was always a 5 day a week, 45 hours a week, a high achiever. And she said, well, when the kids go to bed, I like to use my brain and I put them to bed early. So I never really experienced any real gap. I just got somebody to fill in for and it was no big deal.
That's the way it should be. I think in recruitment, I was talking to Rebecca about it earlier, it was tough, 3 pregnancies in recruitment, but especially the first 2, with both of them, like the first one I came back and my job was completely different because I left a profitable desk, as said. So what I came back to was lower and then you had to start from scratch again. That's really hard to do part-time. And then the second time I just thought, I can't do that again. And they were talking about a demotion or a share co-manager thing or something completely different. It's like, I don't want to do that. So I just resigned. Gone. Yeah. So it's hard.
You work so hard to get where you are, you kind of think,
Yeah.
if I have a baby, is everything I've worked for is
it's a penalty.
Do you think then that's why people then don't take the extra time off? You know how there's all those, I don't know, and
I think it would.
people look at overseas research, particularly Northern Europe or whatever, and they always talk about the Nordic countries and how, men and women take an equal,
shared
raising their child, and then
I think it depends on your baby as well, though. Like your children are individual, so I think every child is unique, and it depends on the individual themselves as well. I think for me, I've just come back from maternity leave, and I thought I was going to take 6 months off, and I'm now 14
6
months.
weeks. Well, I'll find 6 weeks.
And I would love to come back to work. Like I still, in the first few months, I was working ad hoc. But I couldn't because I couldn't do it with my daughter and also me as well. I just wasn't able to do that. But I would have loved to have come back to work.
Depends on your support network too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like your parents or your in-laws.
Yeah, and it's such a big thing. Like you lose your identity and. There's so many things that change as well, and you have to try and fit work into it as well. So I think having that supportive employer or organisation who are staying in contact with you while you are away to let you know, do you know what, when you come back, it is you can still there'll be a sense of normality there. You can come back and be who you are and have that identity. And still be a mum as well, and be successful and still be kicking your goals. I think that's to be able to do that. Any employer is smart to engage and to stay in contact. And
definitely.
to keep their because they work so much harder, like you said, with your girl who was doing 5 days, working 4 days. Of course she is, because she's now had to be a mum as well and be so productive, and there's no time for anything else. You need to be so regimented in everything that you do, and she would love work. Working would be an escape for her. It would be amazing
and rewarding.
Yeah, you get that reward out of it. Yeah,
that was the case with my wife. I remember before we had Louis, she was working. She was chiro. And she was working, wasn't working that much, but she was working. And
4 hours.
There's more women.
I might just leave. What I mean was she was doing Karas get paid reasonably well, so she didn't need to work a lot to make a good amount of money. And she was working probably 3 days a week before, and then she went on maternity leave. And she was gone for a lot longer, like, who was it? Was it you?
Yeah.
Yeah, than she planned. And then coming back, she was just so badly wanted to get into something other than mothering. And I mean, the other thing is it was probably a lot easier for us than most people because I was around all the time too, because I'm pretty much at home every day. And so we were, you know, it was a very, you know, we were sharing a lot with raising Louie at that stage.
So it's an easier transition for her.
Yeah, but when she came back, she had no patients. They'd pretty much all gone to her other.
Yeah, so you start from scratch again.
Yeah.
And then, but obviously you have a number of loyal ones who will come straight back. But yeah, it was pretty difficult for her. I think it was. She never used to talk about sort of being unsatisfied at work before she went on maternity leave, and when she came back, she talked about it quite a lot, and she actually just resigned day before yesterday. So because she just felt like it's just totally
like a failure.
different now, and
I don't know if anyone else experienced this, but when you're at school, like a lot of my girlfriends went into teaching because they knew that they'd be able to get holidays and school hours.
Yeah.
And then my mum told me to go into banking because if you had a baby, you could just have some mat leave and go back to your old job and do part-time banking.
There you go.
My friend who did that.
Yeah.
And she's still with the Commonwealth Bank. And she did the exact thing. She started out as a teller because it was easy. And at those level jobs in the organization, it's very, very easy to do that because tellers are quite at the time that, you know, you could go ahead and get somebody in and then she came back and she worked part-time and then she went off and had her other child and, you know.
Big companies have better policies and processes.
For those, I think for those entry level, easy to slot in the places people, I think that they do that very well. But I'm wondering, I read this article the other day as I, because I kind of doing something with my time while I'm not working. And I read this article and it caught my eye because the headline said, if you're a dad, if you've just become a dad and your life hasn't significantly changed, you're doing it wrong. And so, because basically you get guys that they'll be gone for like a week and then they'll come back and they're like, hey, I had to make this real
There was a blip in my life.
So I wonder, because we have such a contrast between the female experience and the male experience in so many aspects of our world right now. I often wonder if it wouldn't be, almost maybe a provocative way of dealing with things, but whenever even a man actually becomes a dad, we make him take an enforced 3 months paternity leave.
Yes,
Don't
that would be
wait
amazing.
3 months.
That would be
there you go.
So cool.
And the mother would be like, go back to work, you're done your nuts.
No, she can.
Nice.
Yeah, Pete also takes a day off a week to look after
I
his
took 3
daughter.
months at the time, and it was brilliant.
Yeah.
And I think, we made a conscious decision, and it's cost us financially, but we made a very conscious decision that the years before she got to school were going to be about that. So I have Wednesdays with her. That's what Daddy and Piper day. And we hang out. My sister's moved over here recently, so she's got a little cousin as well, and we'll hang out on Wednesdays. But that first 3 months as well, I just feel like the bond I've got with her is so much stronger because of that than it would have been if I hadn't. And I've got a bunch of friends that have kids that are around the same time that didn't do that, and a couple of them that work in IT roles where they've been based in Canberra Monday to Thursday or whatever, and then they come back Friday, and they just don't have anywhere near the same bond. They've got a lot more money in the bank, but they don't have anywhere near that same bond.
I completely agree. So I've been with Louie every day, bar 1 day a week, literally the whole day with my wife, and it's just like had I been in a normal position, as everyone else, I would have I would have just totally missed all that. And it's just something that I just couldn't even imagine not having now.
And I think the flow-on effect that you see in the Nordic countries is a result of men spending time with children. You know, that's why those countries are so, I guess, better balanced in a lot of ways, because the men are actually put into real parenting roles, and it's encouraged that they actually become a actual parent rather than just a donor who is there to pay the bills.
I've got friends that would say they can't play football on Tuesday because they're babysitting.
Oh, the babysitting when you're a parent. Yeah, it's not babysitting. You're not being paid $20 an hour.
It's just that's the psyche. That's how it.
I read a thing the other day on it was again one of those Nordic countries, and it was how they had this massive, I think it was Sweden or something, they had this massive problem with teenagers like drinking and behavioural issues. And there was some crazy statistic, I can't remember it, I'm not going to quote it, but it was a lot. And they found that the teenagers that were acting out like that was mainly because they hadn't spent enough time with both their parents. And so the government started giving the families money every year so that the parents could actually spend time with the kids. And that usage, I remember the end statistic, the usage has dropped below 5% now in teenagers, and it was like really high.
Oh, so both the parents worked stupid hours and the kids were home alone?
No, I think it's the emotional stability, so they could look for it somewhere else.
Yeah, so they were basically, you mean why it was causing? Yeah, basically, yeah. It was just a total imbalance with both parents being around. And you can kind of see that as well. Like I look at my relationship and I look at how much my wife contributes in certain ways and how much I contribute in certain ways. And there's definitely like roles there that two people kind of need to fulfill, I think. Not to mention the
different perspective.
We talk about the northern hemisphere, the Swedens and Norways and what have we. They have a totally different structure and financial structure to allow this to occur. We don't have that here.
And taxation's less too.
It's more.
No, it's more.
We need Joseph's economic model.
Consistently, the levels of happiness and satisfaction are
much higher.
So high.
Yeah, that's right. So they get the benefits of education and health and childcare.
Yeah.
But in Australia, from what I can see, it's more, we talk about men spending time with children, but it's a cultural thing. We're still going back to the era when the man, let's go back to the war. After the war came, all women were in the workforce. They were thrown out of the workforce so that men could have jobs. We're still trying to get over that particular attitude.
And women were just teachers or nurses, and that's all they did, teachers or nursing.
Or a secretary.
It feels like most companies have like a 1950s ad land view of, it's like an episode of what's that? Like that's what it kind of feels like with a lot of organisations that I know of anyway.
That's why so many women as well now having children later, because they're trying to get to the level or have some type of career, and then pushing back having kids to then quickly have your child, then quickly go back after 3 months, 6 months, or whatever it is, and then get back in there, and then try and get back to the level that you were at, and get that same credibility as well.
Satisfaction that you've achieved something.
I've got 5-6 years between my kids, the 3 kids. It's because there's no way in recruitment you could go back a year, do it a year later and then expect to be back where you were.
Well, even now, just with having Ruby coming back, I don't know if I'll have a second one. Because I think I couldn't have another baby for another 2 years.
One of my best friends is waited till she's 35 to have her first child, and she's an executive general manager at Combank. She pumped, and most of my girlfriends, not to be disrespectful, are more educated and earn more money than their husbands. So 6 months she's back to work because she's the primary breadwinner. They live on the northern beaches. They've got an expensive lifestyle, and her husband didn't really like where he was working, and he wasn't earning anywhere near as much as her. And she went, why don't you just quit? And he's like the stay-at-home dad now, and he writes books and does stuff and earns a little bit of income, and he's got investments and buys properties, and he still provides.
Yeah.
And she went back to work after 6 months, popped another one out the next year. There's like 17 months between them, and that was it. She went bang, bang, done, I only want 2, that's it. Yeah. But she waited till she was 35 to get to that point where she had a job to come back to. And Combact's really good. Every 2 years they rotate you in teams anyway, because they're like most banks, once you know what you're doing, they want you to have a stretch goal. So when she came back, they were like, oh, your next move's going to be this, you know, your next move's going to be that. And they kind of plan out all the moves because she's that senior where she's got teams of people reporting into her. And she's been there maybe 10 years and they've been really good.
Yeah.
I mean, she works stupid hours. Sometimes she doesn't get home till 8 o'clock at night. But every Friday she works from home. Every Friday she takes the kids to school. Every Friday she does reading and stuff with the kids. Every Friday she picks them up. And she has conference calls and stuff in between.
Yeah.
And then every night, like you said with your colleague, she smashes out work till like 10 o'clock at night while the kids are in bed. So she does stupid like 60, 70-hour weeks. And even when she was on mat leave, she had to go back in. I was like, what? To do performance reviews on her team. And she's like, well, I'm their manager. I'm like, but you're on mat leave.
You always have to be there for the guy. But you know, it's quite interesting though. The culture of the bank will show that almost more than 60% of the senior women, and they don't really go into this because it's just something that the women in the bank now, about 60% of the senior women have stay-at-home partners. That's a very common thing because, you know, when I worked there, we made really, really good money, and so there was no need. And so I think that, at least 7 or 8 of the female GMs that I know all had stay-at-home partners. Their husbands didn't work. They just stayed at home.
That works at the exec level. Or
it does.
I think the whole having 2 kids in quick succession. That's fine if you've got enough to have one person not working, or if you can afford daycare for 2, 3
well, and she's
years,
at that top echelon.
Otherwise, for a lot of people, to have 2 children at an age where there's going to be an overlap with daycare.
Oh my gosh, it's so expensive.
Someone's got to earn 100k just to pay for daycare. If you live anywhere sort of around here.
In Northern Beaches, they're paying through the nose for their mortgage.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But I mean, that's just it's like we've just decided that we're gonna have another baby, and so anyway, my wife's like 13 weeks pregnant now.
Congratulations! No wonder she said up yours to a job. She's like morning sickness. I'm done.
But we decided we were aiming to we wanted. Well, she wanted 2, I wanted 1. She said, an only child's a lonely child, and I agreed.
And she pinned you down and made you
but so we were gonna aim for just 2. So I said 2, all right, 2. So we've settled with 2, but I wanted them within 2 years because I heard that's a lot easier. They get on all better.
I think you wanted them.
Anyway,
science.
But that's
you can't say you don't want it now because it's already happened.
Don't go back on that one. But that's really, I mean that was like a big conversation for us, and I think I look at our situation and I realize how fortunate we are.
You're blessed.
And I just do not see, even looking at what she does as a mother, at home, only work, even when she was working only part-time, with me around. How the hell do people do it?
This one had twins.
Twins. And how do people do it with
we only have to get pregnant once, that's the
because I was starting my HR career, so I started my HR career a bit late, and I was in an advisor role. I got pregnant with twins, and I had a little bit of pressure to get back to work to continue my journey in HR where I was working at the time. And so my husband and I made the decision. He actually took a career break and he looked after our kids for the whole year. And then he actually changed his career, so he would work basically Friday to Monday, and I'd work Monday to Friday. I wouldn't see him, but we made sure that we had covered, one of us was always with our kids, and that lasted about 18 months to then he changed his role again to work Monday to Thursday. So he's now with the kids Friday, and I still work Monday to Friday, and my journey in HR has been successful. I'm the primary breadwinner now, but it's one of those decisions. I think everyone has.
Yeah.
You know, you make life choices.
Yeah.
You choose to have children, or
Yeah.
you know, you decide what will I make. Will I continue with my career? Do I put it on hold? What other sacrifices will my partner take? And I'm very lucky. I have a very supportive husband who was willing and was actually very jealous that he was sent back to work after 6 weeks. My kids were very preemie, so he went back to work and then came back for 10 days and had to go back again. So he was very happy that he got to spend the full year with them. But it would be nice. You hear about the Northern Hemisphere. I've got friends, same situation. They've got twins and a 7-year-old, like an older child. We visited. They pay nothing for childcare. The husband always dropped them off at school or daycare. She managed to work part-time, fully supported through to the primary school age. She was able to continue working part-time while the kids were at primary school and continue her career. And it was very different.
Well, it's hard for you going back to work. It's not easy. You have to make those decisions as well as a family financially. Whoever is making the most money with what's the best option for your family, not for you.
Yeah.
So that would be. But you made the right.
Yeah, I made the right decision. I'm happy with my decision.
Yeah.
My husband's still jealous of me on a Friday when I rock up, and he's been arguing with them, and they come running to me. On a Saturday morning, like we hang out, and my husband's like, "Oh, I'm still here, you know."
Yeah.
So I think you don't lose that bond as a mother either.
Yeah.
No.
Our site operations manager, they've got 2 kids and they struggled a lot to have kids, and they weren't even going to end up having kids. They tried everything, and they ended up having the first one, and they had the second one. And they made the decision she was going to stay at home until the second one goes to school. He's only 18 months or almost 2. And he said to me, I'm glad I earn enough to do that. And they managed to move from just a house in suburbia to a property of acreage. But he has worked really hard with his career. He's been in our company 13 years and worked his way up to the most senior manufacturing role. And he's being groomed now for the GM role in the future, succession planning. But he said we made that choice because we didn't think we could have kids, and when we did, we wanted to spend all that time with them, and we want someone to be with them till they're 5.
Yeah.
But he said I'm so blessed, A, that we could eventually have kids, and B, that we're in a position where my wife can stay home and be with the kids, because not everyone's got that choice in their life.
And I think it's kind of like, I was talking to someone, was it you? It was you, or it was both of you, earlier about how the whole, like, I think what you're doing with Trio is like really important, because the best way to change the culture on this kind of thing is just to start doing it. Like, it's one of those, like, that whole concept of money. Like, we've created this concept of money, and now we work for it. And we've created something, and we work every day for it. Like, how dumb is that as a species? But it's just the way it is. And I think it's similar with this. You know, we've created this way of operating, and it's extremely capitalist. But it's the way it is, and the best way to change that isn't just to throw it all out, it's to just start something that works and allow that to slowly make it, make
the norm.
Yeah, become the norm, exactly. Yeah. And so I think that's kind of what's exciting about all of this, is that there are lots of stories that are actually working.
Yeah.
And it's important too, I guess, while the CommBank has had its share of bad decision making, Ian Nara was a relatively young dad when he was there, and he would leave because he had to go get his kids from school, and he was running the bank, and people were like, but he's like, yeah, no, I got school pickup today, I gotta go.
Isn't that a great role model? I mean, you need, that has to be from the top down. Yeah.
It just stopped halfway through. But at least I think that he's going to be a good dad.
Yeah.
Rotten CEO, but a really good dad. Right? So he's accomplished something that really, for all of us as a society, is more important.
Yeah.
I would rather see him be a good father than a brilliant CEO, and then the kids drinking and everything else. No, I'd rather you invest in the future and those kinds of things than, share market. And
I think that's kind of, sorry, I don't want to be one of those people who dominates the conversation, but I think that's
You don't want to be, you are.
interesting conversation.
Now that you're about to be dead.
He's got a passion.
No,
But you can't quit because your wife quit, so you've got to stay. And everyone comes in the family.
Anyone like to talk
and
about
now I've
their
completely
lives?
forgotten what I was going to say.
You think the really cool thing?
What was it that you just said the last
CEO, role model.
He's going to be a great dad.
Yeah.
Not drinking.
Gone.
And it didn't filter
If you
through.
can dominate the conversation, can you do it properly?
Do you have baby brain?
Point input.
But it made me think of something, so
Yeah.
I can't remember what you're going to think. Can I dominate the conversation? So I worked for West Farmers
businesses.
and in the industrial
Teaching
section.
them about how to keep in touch with the women that are on maternity leave, but also the men that may be out on paternity leave.
Yeah.
How are you finding that?
Sorry, how
How are you finding the employers being receptive to that and understanding what they need to do to keep contact with their
Yeah.
people?
So we do have men and women on the platform. We openly promote sort of a gender neutral approach to it. We make everything really simple for the manager, and because we take away their workload and we're basically a safety net for them, they're happy to send on that information. What we've done with the keeping in touch whilst they're away, we've actually moved the emphasis away from the manager onto the colleagues, and it's employee controlled. So the employee nominates who they hear from, about what and how often,
Right.
and then the system contacts those nominees at the frequency dictated or requested, and then the colleagues provide their updates, the system curates an email and sends it to the person on leave to their personal email address. So they're getting juicy gossip that keeps, is really the glue that keeps people connected to their team, as well as all the high level business information, personnel changes, system changes, things like that. It's prompting the colleagues to keep the person on leave updated. And like you were saying, when you then come back to work, irrespective of how long that period away has been, you really still feel that you're part of the team and you've been across everything that's happened. So that transition back is a lot quicker and a lot smoother. So I think it's that combination that we're making it so easy for managers that they don't need to do anything but press a button. Why wouldn't they? And when their people are away from the business, it's actually the colleagues, and they're your friends. So they're prompted. So it's just a beautiful sort of synergy really between the two.
Yeah, because my experience has always been out of sight, out of mind. So therefore,
Yeah.
even colleagues, great friends, unless they're so close to each other, they see each other outside work.
Yeah.
As soon as the
Yeah, if you're not
baby arrives,
socially
it's gone.
friends outside of work, you might have lunched with them all the time in work, but yeah.
Yeah, and it changes completely. So some sort of system, and that's why it's the question, how is it being accepted by the staff and the managers in particular, and how are they sort of adopting it, and if easily, or are they sort of saying, well, I'm not quite sure I really understand why we need to do this?
Yeah, it's the companies that I'm working with have either invested in their parental leave policy, so predominantly putting a paid policy in place. So they want to underpin it with a process that ensures that the benefits are actually going to be seen and delivered to the employee. And one company, which goes back to what we were saying about very male dominated. So they've got 80% men and intergeneration. So we've got old and young generations, 3 or 4 generations in one organisation. So when we talk about, traditionally the older generations are the ones that are in management, and then you've got the younger generations coming through and having families. And there's a real disparity between their perception, the manager's perception. Back in my day, I have a wife and she's at home and she does the job of parenting and picking up the kids and dropping. Why are you asking for, flexibility or time off? Why are you doing the pickup? But this company, obviously, the younger generation is their future of the business. So they need to keep these people happy. They need to keep them engaged. They need to retain them. But there's just this huge gap. So they've actually brought us on board to try and shift the dial and change the conversation and really sort of change the culture. Technology can't change culture, but it can start to change the conversation and educate and inform. So that's sort of why, and they've got 80% men. Men are on our platform. So, you know, the other thing that they wanted to do was, if we can provide all of this information to our fathers, they're going to take that home, and if they can support their wives or partners better, they're going to be more productive when they come back into work. So it's really a sort of circular community approach rather than just a really narrow-minded, this is my business and we only want to benefit our business. It's a much sort of broader perspective.
It comes into wellness, mental health.
Yeah.
Because it's Mental Health Month this month.
It is.
And yesterday was World Mental Health Day.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And through your research, did you find people are doing it well already, or have you come
very
across...
few companies are really doing it well.
Are they aware of it though?
So I think there's some companies that just don't care.
Yeah.
You know, we just don't care.
When you associate a cost to that.
The attraction and retention
is significant, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're in HR, you know, it's the figures of anything between 75 to 300% cost in terms of attrition.
That's crazy.
Isn't it, right?
And I can't believe your percentages, that 3 out of 5 women take lesser skilled. That's crazy.
I can't believe that 30% left in the first year. I'm back and going, I don't like this, see you later.
Or they're not I can't get the flexibility.
Flex or challenge.
Or
flexibility is a big thing.
Part-time, you have to do full-time, that's it.
Yep. Or their transition back hasn't been supported. So you were saying you did, you know, a staggered return.
Yes.
You know, that's, you know, one thing that a lot of companies are looking at to do to really help that transition back. But yeah, you know, women are leaving in droves, but people don't measure that year after. They just measure the retention. And really that's, you know, they've gone through the maternity leave. If it's been a paid parental leave, you know, you've invested in them. It's crazy to then lose them just because there's that, you know, that transition hasn't been monitored. And I think a lot is because companies are inflexible. Exactly what you were saying. It's almost in the too hard basket.
Because she's amazing, and he said she's amazing.
Yeah.
But in his head, he wanted someone 5 days. I think he was that stressed out with the workload, he couldn't see that a part-time person could help.
Yeah.
Perception. Good question.
Yeah.
So, personal situation, my wife's, the business that she worked with for a decade closed down while she was on mat leave, basically. So she was faced with coming back into the workforce fresh, not going back to somewhere that she's valued and understand her track record, etc. And she found it a real struggle to get the flexibility that she would ideally have wanted to do. She works full-time at the moment. She would ideally not want to be working full-time, but she doesn't really have
a choice.
Option by the sounds of things. I just wondered whether you have any experience of companies acknowledging that providing that same level of flexibility to new people coming into the business who are returning from that leave to attract that top talent, as opposed to just providing support and flexibility to returning people. Do you have companies doing that?
Yes, they are.
Cool.
So there's not a huge numbers, but yes, they are. You know, there's a sort of a movement that really is around all roles flex. You know, because the more we make flexibility the norm, the more we provide flexibility and we normalise parenting for all parents, we remove that sort of spike of it's a women's issue. You know, only women are asking for flexibility, only women are putting their sort of head up and being identified as they're not ambitious, or we're going to have to put them into a lower role, or we can't have that flexibility because they're not going to be able to do that job as well as what I need. So the sooner all roles are flexible, then the better. You know, the step before that would be men and women, or all parents having flexibility. But yeah, there are. So there are. Flex Careers is a key organisation that promotes companies that are only family friendly and flexible. Work 180, Beam, and Pufflin. So they would be 4 organisations that are really focused. And their policies are, we will only work with companies that meet certain criteria. and that they are flexible and that they are family friendly.
I think it's important though too, especially with such a diverse workforce, that I found that I had somebody else on my team who wanted flexibility that didn't have kids.
Yeah.
And I went, okay.
Yeah.
But, you know, it doesn't, you know, it's like, oh, you're a parent, that means you get put in this box. No, you're a human and we're all in this box.
Yes.
That's-
Yes.
100%.
What I was just about to say, all of this is, this is like just slow progress toward us not focusing on profit and actually focusing on people. Like all of this stuff, all of these conversations around wellness, all of that, it's all just moving from money to people. Whereas forever it's just been money.
And bottom line, every company's EBITDA.
But the irony is, I mean, you've all got experience of that flexible workers are actually really productive. They're really productive, profitable.
3 days a week, I leave because I've decided not to do 60, 70 hours a week because I'm always sick. But I leave now, I'm going, it's 5:30, you've been here since 8:30, that's enough.
Yeah.
And the 3 day a weeker is still there every day. She's there when I get in, she's there when I leave. And he didn't want her back 3 days a week. And so if I was doing 60, 70 hours, she's doing that probably.
Yeah, I was going to
for
say, I
3
bet you
days a
she
week,
does
yeah.
5 days worth.
And the thing is that we now know as a result of a lot of studies that have been done, working 8 hours a day, you're really only really at the top of your game between 4 to 5 hours in that day.
Yeah.
So I had a really great experience in California. I worked for Merrill Lynch Mortgage, and we all worked a 9-day fortnight. So everybody was still 40 hours, so because, you know, they still wanted their pound of flesh. Yeah, so we worked like a little bit longer Monday through, well, I always like having Mondays off because Fridays you get to wear jeans, so why wouldn't you not want to come to work? So I would on Monday either. No, never. So, you know, I come into work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you work a little bit longer day. Fridays were always 8-hour days, and then the next week I would work Monday to Friday, a normal week. So you would almost bank the hours so that you could always have 1 day off out of every single fortnight. And there were people, I mean, we stayed at that company for like, you know, forever. Plus it was overlooking Torrey Pines, so it had a really good view. But I mean, people would just, you know, would be clamoring to get to work there because who didn't want to work a 9-day fortnight, especially in Southern California?
Yeah.
You
What
know,
amazing
like,
culture.
Oh yeah, great.
You'd think that'd be like that in Sydney. Like, what?
Yeah.
Is that where the water skiing accident was?
No, that was in Michigan. Yeah.
But we've got an example in New Zealand where there's a company there that's just gone full time on it, but they pay people 5 days for a 4-day week.
Yeah. It's based on productivity.
And despite the fact that we don't talk about money, their productivity went through the roof.
Yeah.
And they're getting paid less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
read
they were
that,
paying
yeah.
the same amount of money.
And it's
And
a really
working
small
less.
business that the owner just decided
Yeah,
to
he
do
said
that.
this is it, you know? So that's what
It's
goes
a
on.
system, isn't it, where people have tried those things. I
Yes.
know there was I can't remember the name of the company, but it was actually a company that made like surfboards.
Yes,
and that
I
kind of
do know
stuff.
exactly that
And
story.
They went to exactly that. Didn't
Yeah,
they?
I think it was was it 6 hours a day or half days? They went to half
Yeah,
days,
it was half-
and they did
it was
exactly
half
the
days.
same
Basically, everyone had to
productivity.
start off by 1 o'clock.
Yes.
They could-
But you had to have certain things achieved. before you
Yes.
could go.
Yeah, that's it. That's your productivity. And if you haven't done it, people would just stay, but they'd stay of their own accord because
Yeah.
most days they get to go surfing in it.
Yeah.
So if you are, you're not going to let the side down there, are you?
No.
But they actually found that productivity didn't drop at all, despite everyone having every afternoon off to go surfing.
And look at what else you're going to achieve from that. You know, your retention, your engagement, your happiness, you know, your brand.
But that's it. The brand for actually.
Yeah.
increasing.
And
marketing
marketing too.
Absolutely.
They're on the boards that the company
That's so
makes.
true. Yeah.
You know,
You'd have a list of people wanting to work for you.
Yeah.
You know.
Lining up. It's funny. I think that you know, the minute that your happiness goes
That's
up,
true.
I think the first thing that you start to find the statistics are the minute that you get to be in a better workspace, your productivity goes up immediately by 19%. That's just by like coming into a workspace that you like. So you can imagine if you get to come into a workspace that you love, that gives you a 4-day work week, your productivity is just simply going to go through the roof because it's letting you be a human while actually working at the same time, rather than just a cog in a wheel to just constantly do all that kind of stuff. And I'm hoping that knock on artificial wood here, as we continue to get more that's pressed. As we work to get more, I guess, aware of the way that the human brain works and how we actually react to things, hopefully people will start to get really clever, because otherwise we've got all this wasted time. I read the other day there was this guy, I think, and one of the things I read, James Altucher or something like that, he wrote this article about everybody needs to stop reading the newspaper because it takes up 45 minutes of your day, and you could be actually putting that to getting ahead and being a billionaire, and people at work are wasting all this time, and they're on the thing and they're doing social kind of stuff, and I'm like, yeah, and 5 hours. That's what you get out of people. You get 5 hours. The rest of the time, lunch, breaks, chatting to people, being human. So why not pare it down? And I know myself, when you were a kid in school, if they said, yeah, you can go as soon as you finish that, man, I would have done it in a heartbeat.
Yes.
Really, I get to go? Okay, fine. I'm out, right?
You don't have a pass.
But it was the idea of give me my freedom. And really the reason that we work, it's to buy things, but we work for freedom.
Yeah.
Everything that we do is to buy personal freedom, and yet then we sacrifice. It's crazy. It's crazy.
But we still have to get past that attitude, which we still have, which is we start at 9 o'clock, we finish at 5 o'clock, and if you're not at your desk for that period of time, you're going to be begging for it. So you're not. And really, it's not 5 o'clock anymore. It's 5:30, and if you're leaving too early, then you're not being dedicated to this job.
And if you're not still there at 7, you're not committed.
There's a grey hair sitting in there, managing the people below them.
Yeah. And I'm rubbing my hands together, waiting for heart attacks. For all of them. I just want them all to go. Because I think that. It's the natural thing, and I think that in a lot of ways we are at a crossroads right now. There are things that are happening all over the world, and I think that that's starting to shift. It's not going to be painless. I think that there's going to be a lot of tears and a lot of uncomfortableness. But I think that with the millennials that are coming through, people are like, and this guy was going on about you need to have loyalty to your country. To your company, there's not a single millennial that's going to have loyalty to a company. You paying me? Good. You're not paying me? I'm gone.
How many companies have loyalty to their employees now? It's not like it was when we were in the 80s.
Already, yes. There isn't really, is there?
Tomorrow, if I left, they couldn't care less. They'll just get someone else. Everyone's replaceable.
Very much.
Companies are going to have to change, though, to attract and retain
If they want
that
to make money,
workforce.
they still have to attract good people.
And keep them.
Yeah.
So they're gonna. They have to shift. They have to change.
How many companies, when you've been going for interviews and you look on their website and they say they've got all these flexible work practices, you ask a few questions in the interview and you're like, you don't really, just put it on your website.
Yes.
You get there and they expect you to be there 60, 70 hours a week, and if you're not, they're like, where are you?
Yeah.
You're not doing any work. Like, our company lets us, and it's really hard in HR to work from home, but I did today, because I had a couple of tradespeople to come at home. I find I'm more productive at home because no one bothers me. I smash it out. I get a couple of phone calls about NBA queries or something. Because if you're in your office, they go, oh, that's right. And my boss said to me one day, Heather, your office is like a doctor's surgery. I need a ticket to come and see you. It's like they tag team and he can't even come in because it's like back to back all day. I can't even reply to emails because it's like tag team. And they all come and download and tell me their problems and they feel better. And then I go home with 57 problems.
And work all night.
Did you fix mine? Oh, well, I had another 7. Like I walked in on Monday. I got an email on Sunday night about a sexual harassment complaint. So I investigated that. Then I fired someone for smoking pot before their pre-employment medical, and they failed their pre-employment medical. And in between that, Monday morning, 2 o'clock, pot smoking, I had 15 other issues, and that was Monday. And I'm like, okay, this is what my week is going to be like. That was this week.
Oh my
And I was like, okay, happy days, and that's Monday.
It's not the idea of someone smoking a joint to calm their nerves for their
And the funniest bit is he took Quadril as well to try and mask it. It was quite funny. And so we got the medical and it said Quadril and cannabis, and I was like, right, that doesn't work, buddy. Do you not know that they're two different things?
Yeah, one doesn't cancel out the other.
Mixture of drugs. Mixture of drugs. No, I think that companies are changing, and when you do look at large organizations like the Commonwealth Bank, they do maternity leave and paternity leave really well, and there are people out there that do encourage it. My previous gym, I had somebody else in our team who had twins. I don't know if it was in the water, I'm not too sure, but she also had twins, and so she said, well, I'm only going to come back 3 days a week, and he's like, oh, okay, fine. He's like, are you okay with that? I'm like, yeah, sure, we can work with that. It's not a problem. And after about a month, he's like, so, can we ask her to come back 4 days a week? And I'm like, no. He's like, but I bet she would if we asked her. I'm like, I bet she would if we asked her. So guess what? If you want her back 4 days a week, you ask her, because I'm not going to do that. Well, he was like spineless, so it never happened. And then about another 2 months later, he's like, really, she needs to come. And I'm like, why? What is it that you are not getting, that you're looking for? And I think it was very much, it's like he was the kind of man that liked to walk into his office space and have
everyone sitting there.
Well, in his case, women. He had his own little harem kind of thing going on. And he liked to have like all the women there kind of thing, so that people could see that really big
During all the transactions.
Yeah.
I wonder how much of it is also that guy kind of subconsciously, well, I have to work 5 days a week.
Yeah.
But there's that
I think that is a lot.
I don't
Yeah.
get Thursdays off.
It's seen as a privilege.
From the day she's having off.
But I got more done today than if I was in the office, because not one person bothered me.
Yeah.
And I got one phone call all day.
Yeah, but no one else's problem was solved.
That's okay, because tomorrow I'll have them all picked up and out the door, Heather's back. But it's Friday, okay, what's not to love about
I think
Friday?
a lot of the new startups and stuff like that as well, because they're trialing totally new models, they're able to create this type of thing the way it needs to happen, as opposed to sticking to old things too. So I really feel like Elsa said with the heart attacks that happen, that it will sort of phase itself out, because there are a lot of very forward-thinking young people starting.
And the old school people will have to retire eventually.
Yeah.
And there are other ways around this. I remember when I was way back when I was going to university, and my sister was home and decided she wanted to go back to university, and she had 2 children by that point, and I can remember we picked a college that was a little bit odd so that we could go to the same school as ourselves. It was like new wave kind of thing. They had childcare right there in the school, in the lunchroom kind of thing, behind glass. So if you were there at school all day doing your thing, my sister could like drop in and see the kids during the day. She was right there. And I think that's the other thing that we need to really, society needs to look at, is let's bring childcare into a much more managed kind of situation, not where you drop your kid off who's like then 3 hours away because you have to commute down to Sydney because you can't afford to buy a house here, and then if the kid's sick, oh my god, then you gotta, you're freaking out about getting back and stuff like that. I think that the other thing is to really, I'm hoping that more large corporations will look at incorporating creches and childcare on site, so that then parents also can kind of leverage that sense of being right there.
My first job in HR did.
It was brilliant.
Insurance Australia Group was my first. I was like you, late into HR. I think I was about 30 when I got my first HR job, because I did all my rest of my career in accounting. And Insurance Australia Group had to keep in touch with the mums. So when they found out you were pregnant, they had like a group, and it was run by a different HR department. I think it was the legal department. And then they did updates and emails, and they were all in the same group, and they could share ideas. And they also had a whole floor of meeting rooms if you wanted to book, because it was in the city. we had 25 floors, so level 13, I can't remember if that was right, I think it was, because no one wanted to work on level 13, that's right, that's where all the meeting rooms were. And they actually had this room, if your kid was sick, you could actually go and work in this room, and it had a microwave, and you could heat up your milk, and it had TV for the kids to watch movies, and you could actually just work from that room all day. So you could take your laptop down there and actually sit there and bring your kid to work if it was sick.
That's great.
Yeah, and I was like really blown away because I was 30 and I was
like it.
yeah, I'd worked for these small businesses that are accounting firms, and I've gone into this 25-story, didn't even know how to get there the first day. You know, went for the interview, I'm like, hang on, where do I go again? And they had this room, I mean, it was only one room, and it like you kind of had to book
But
it
back
out.
in, yeah, that
But
would
if
have
you needed
been
to go and
impressive.
If you needed to go and express milk or whatever, you could close the door and do it, you had to book it. So it was that stigma was removed because you weren't sitting at your desk going, my kid's under the table, you know, because I've got no one else to look after it.
Yeah.
And there was this, it's available to everyone, and there was comms, and I knew about it, and I've never had kids, I don't want kids, and I knew where this room was. So it was really well, they'd have meetings and tell you about it, you know, they'd have comm sessions, and so everybody knew about it. And even if you're a bloke and you wanted to bring your kid to work because your wife couldn't, you could sit in that room and the kid could watch movies and you could do your job, you know.
Yeah.
I think that what you mentioned about expressing and all that, I think that kind of the rawness of having a kid is another thing. That
I think
whole
you have
like
to have a kid as well, because when we were talking about expressing and that before I had my daughter, if someone was having this conversation, it's like me personally, I probably would have felt a bit
well, you would
awkward.
I would have get awkward about it. But now that I'm like, well, that's just part and parcel. You need to be okay with it. But if you haven't gone through that, then you can't expect people to be okay with it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think that there needs to be like more education within organisations around that, because it's like I see that at home. If I'm at home with Louie or whatever, and my wife, I don't know, he starts crying and she's having a shower or something, if I'm on the phone, what am I going to do? I'm not going to leave my kid to cry. So I've got someone on the other end who potentially doesn't have a kid or has any understanding at all, and I'm saying,
and you can hear the kid screaming.
And screaming in the phone because I don't know if they come up. But I think like that whole taboo around like having kids at that age is, or at any age that I've experienced.
It shouldn't be taboo.
That's really funny. I wouldn't say, like, if I was on the phone to you, I'd go, do you need to go and call me back later? Surely they say that.
Yeah, I actually think that like when I've had that with Piper, for example, I think it humanises you.
Yeah.
To me, I think candidates that I'm talking to, or a client that I'm talking to, can see me as a human being. There's more of a connection there that's not just.
It does, but it depends on them, because I would have
conversations
before I had my daughter with and women like in HR, and they do have children, and they would have a screaming child in the background. I'll be honest, I would be like, oh my gosh, why can
unprofessional.
Now I'm mum. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're amazing. I'm like, take all the time that you want. I'm like, how I'm gonna sit down, like you probably haven't even brushed your hair today or had a cup of tea.
Or you're still in your pajamas.
Yes, I think you are.
And you haven't had a shower.
Yeah, but you know where it's probably come from? Like when we were younger and we grew up, because we've all been born from our mothers, like that's.
Yeah.
So I think it's something that will change, because it's about us as parents now, or as parents, to educate our children to be okay with it. So our mothers probably never sat down and said, because it was quite taboo back then, you do, like I did breastfeed you, and this is life, and this is like, and so the conversations that parents are having with us as children will be very different to the conversations that we'll be having with our children, and it's up to us to have those conversations with our children, to let them be okay about it before they have children, so that they are comfortable with that, and if they haven't had a child and someone's breastfeeding in front of them, they don't feel awkward, because we will probably breastfeed ourselves. Like, how are we going to survive if our mothers don't look after us?
That's so true, because our parents never talked about any of that.
Never,
And that's what, like, I feel as well with that whole taboo around it. Like you said, it makes it, for some people, it's more personal. It's more of a personal connection. And I think that's the case with a lot of people that I talk to, but there's a lot of people that I might be seeing, I don't know, doing some deal with or whatever, and they would literally, like, they would draw the line at that. They'd be like, right, it's over. And to me now, before I had a kid, I would have been all upset about. Now I'm like, well, I don't want to work with someone like that anyway. So if you don't understand it, then I don't want to be a part of my business.
But it can be irritating, like Bianca said, you're like in mid-conversation and the kid's screaming and the parent's not doing anything to quiet the kid down.
Absolutely. Well, that was before I had a child, but
and now you're like, it's okay, you go.
Background as well, like call me back anytime.
There's a point where you kind of like abandon ship.
When he's screaming and your wife just got in the shower, you know you've got at least 10 minutes before she gets out, right?
They had a video that was quite popular on YouTube not too long ago, and I think I picked it up on one of my many reads. And it was this guy doing a interview. He was being interviewed online, live on air.
I love it.
And was it when the nanny came in?
And they came in and it was all video and she had to try and push him out when she's squatting down.
But now
she was on the toilet, she had her pants down.
I think that's
I saw her squatting down.
I saw that because that was amazing. And he was, even though like he was laughing,
he was so composed though.
And he still delivered.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
How did he actually keep going?
Because he's a dad.
Yeah.
It's like, this is what you do.
And that was so good. And that was a message to everyone else. That was a message to everyone else. You know what? Shit, this happens.
And it was live. It was streaming live, so you couldn't like not upload it and do it again. Like
you can do that and be okay with it.
And she was all frantic, and she's sitting on a chair trying to push it out the door.
It was the best.
I didn't know she had her pants down. I didn't notice that.
Watch it again.
I didn't notice that.
And I thought it was a little bit craven, but they recently had a fashion show where they had some of the models, and at least one of them was coming down the modeling walkway while wearing her breast pump. I would want it accessorized, at least colored out. And it was
it accidental or on purpose?
It was on purpose. It was on purpose because it was all about challenging norms and concepts of female beauty and whatever, I don't know. But it was kind of like, and here's what I'm doing, or the woman who went to Parliament and said, hey, I'm breastfeeding, and there you go, and oh well, and people, oh, how can you do that? That's rude. It's like, this is how people get grown.
Yeah.
This is how people.
Yeah.
This is the
and
thing.
you've probably done this. Like when you're a baby, this has probably got to you to eat by now.
Yeah. You know what? You can do it so discreetly. Like I was in a food court with my parents on the weekend, and my dad is 100% old school. And there was this woman, and he was more interested in her little 2-year-old little granddaughter, or whatever it was. No, daughter, sorry. And her husband's playing with the little 2-year-old. And he said, my dad looks over at one stage and he can see a double primo. There must be another one, he says. And I look over and she's got the baby under there and she's got the shawl over. He could not see anything. I said, oh, she's feeding the baby. Dad's gone, what? Oh, yeah, okay. And he's like, look at the little pink shoes she's got on over there. But my dad's so old school, but because my sister's had 2 kids and he's sat there next to my sister while she's breastfeeding, he's like, you would want me to leave the room? She's like, no, Dad, I've got everything covered. You can't see anything. So he's got used to it, but he was very much like, you don't do that in front of me. I don't need to see that. You go in another room and close the door,
I think that things are changing.
They are changing. There was a feed today on one of the things I was watching somewhere where a woman was giving the weather report.
With a baby on her back.
A 1-year-old on the back.
Oh, in one of the swings.
Yeah, and she was doing the weather report and here's the kid on the back.
See, that to me is what I would just love to see.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Because that's how it should be.
Yeah.
Why should we feel like we have to hide this stuff? It's the same taboo that's around like talking about going to the toilet and stuff like that. I mean, it's gross, but the reality is we all do it. Like
it happens.
You know what's gross is when your kid puts the potty in the lounge room, pulls their pants down and goes to the toilet in the lounge room. Because one of my friends' kids did that. Hey, I did a poo, and I'm like, that's great.
It's pretty awesome, trust me.
In the lounge room. I did a poo, and he did a happy dance. I did a poo.
If it's not in the nappy, that's fantastic. That's a step forward.
His dad got so embarrassed he closed the front door, you don't need to tell the whole street. Like, isn't that meant to be in the bathroom? She's like, That's the best way he's ever
Yeah,
done
put
it.
that one in Insta.
She was like, that's the best way he's ever done it. I don't care where he's done it, he can do it anywhere. I'm like, I don't need to see that. She's like, but that's really good, we've made progress.
So I'm hopeful that things are starting to change, and there's been a bigger shift, I think, in probably the last 5 to 6 years, I think. And I think it's also too because a lot of women in senior positions have moved away from the Sheryl Sandberg approach to just lean in.
Yeah.
It'd be really easy for me to just lean in if I made her salary. All of us would lean in if you made her salary, right?
Yeah.
It's not hard to lean in when you've got a cook, a cleaner, somebody looking after your kids. Lean in. But now you've got more women out there that are going, I'm juggling stuff here and things are really frantic. And women, I think, are being more open about our needs and starting to get a little bit more vocal.
And sharing the mental load. And like men, like you guys, taking the mental load.
I think,
like that's the hardest part, I think. And that's why women...
It's a cultural thing. But we need our government still, and we've seen it over the last several years, where the government is so far behind the population on the attitudes. But the government really needs to come to the party and forget getting big business tax cuts. We need to increase it so that we can actually increase the compensation given to people to stay at home and look after their kids.
Yeah, because if they raise their kids well, they'll have to pay for them later when they go cray-cray.
Yeah.
That's right. It becomes so much easier, and everything else, a lot of things start to go right as opposed to wrong. And save money in the long run.
Yeah, and I think you see that in the Nordic countries already. You get that sense of their sense of what is important and their sense of what are their priorities is a lot different. And yes, people do complain. The tax rate is ridiculously high. I am only first-generation American. My mother and all the family is back in Denmark, so I'm quite aware of how the things kind of work there. And my godmother would go back and she's like, oh my gosh, we have to bring in bottles of bourbon, because bottles of bourbon, they were like $120, $90. And I'm like, really? And she's like, yeah, because there's like 87,000% tax on it. And I'm like, oh, okay. She's like, yeah, I know. Because even now, because my mother was born and raised and was a Danish citizen, if something happens to me, I can fly to Denmark, get off the plane, show my birth certificate and say, I need you to look after me, and they will.
That's what I'm
I'm quite lucky with friends here. Over the last, so I played a sport that's sort of largely Scandinavian. For
Curling?
No, floorball.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of those have now got to the kind of age where they're having kids, and quite a few of them have gone home to have the children based on what they get for that first couple of years, their quality of life for that first few years of their kid's life. They can be around them, they're not under financial strain, all of that kind of stuff, and then eventually they come back here. They go home to do that.
And their tax structure there, to your point, is very different in that it's almost a flat tax structure. So even the very wealthy people in Denmark are not really very wealthy. They're only like maybe this much instead of, here I think it's your average CEO makes 600 times the amount of what the average worker in the company makes. Whereas in Denmark, it's like, they're lucky if they get 7 or 10 times as much as what the average worker makes at that level, because they get taxed. Everything gets taxed. And the more money you make, the more they tax you. So
but it starts right from the get-go.
Yes.
I know they have in, I think it's Finland, isn't it, where they do the thing when you first have a child in the hospital and they get the
box.
The box.
It becomes a bed with all the goodies in it.
It's there, all the things you need to take your child home and look after it, and there's your box.
We used to get one of those.
And that's obviously taxpayers.
It's
a cardboard box.
Keep it going for the first one.
We get sachets of Q-Rash.
That was before there was one.
It's not the same.
Okay, well, what do we need to do to actually support people in that first period when, frankly, when you have your first kid, and you're like, what the hell is going on?
Scared shitless.
Marty's trying to keep the seat in the car for the baby captions.
The more things society can make easy for you at that time, better, because that's when you're really vulnerable. You're vulnerable, you're time poor, you're tired. If society can say, well, hey, look, these are the things that are going to make that period of your life easier for you to cope, then...
And I think that really brings it into, can you tell us, what your vision is for Trio? where do you see it, and how do you see it morphing?
Clearly a lot of passion around it.
Yeah.
Especially from the boys in the
I know. I mean, this is part of it. You know, I would love all parents, like there literally to be no gender, no primary, secondary care around it. That parenting is just normal within a workplace. It's totally accepted, and I mean, all parents have access to bond with their children. And that's simply it. You know, people stay engaged. They don't have to go through the stress of, I mean, I was only coaching women, but the stress of being made redundant or having a negative experience or being out of work. Like you say, your wife was out, but obviously it was, you know, the company closed down, but trying to find a job that fits around family, about part-time hours, and, you know, you want to be able to be a good mum or be a good parent and also deliver at work. It's hugely stressful. So if we can just remove all of that and parents to be fully accepted, fully supported, and it to be a really just seamless transition. Yes, there is this sort of hump that you have to get over when you become a parent. But if companies are more human in their approach, then we should be able to really close that gap and make it a lot more seamless. And as you've been talking, you know, we are at Mental Health Month. You know, I think must be a correlation between the rise in mental health illnesses today and suicide rates of, particularly in men, and the stresses they're under, and the load of parenting. You know, yes, there is the motherhood load, there is the mental load, but, you know, women have to push back on their men at home. You know, we need support, otherwise we're going to break. Men are unable or too afraid to speak up at work because of the stigma around it. That's not good. So there's just this huge amount of pressure where we, you know, I feel like we're almost at a boiling point where, you know, the lid is coming off, and
like a pressure cooker.
It is a pressure cooker. And somewhere we have to just become more humanistic in our approach to how we treat people, you know, in general.
I dialed into a conference call today for Mental Health Week. It was run by Beyond Blue. I felt very depressed by the end of the hour of the statistics. But what really blew me away, because, you know, male youth suicide is off the
Yes, it's so
what really
sad.
blew me away was anxiety, and everyone's got a small amount of anxiety in their life, and it's how you manage it. But people with severe anxiety, they said 1 in 3 women. There was only 1 in 5 men, and I was like, what? All the statistics are male suicide, they don't want to talk to their mates, they don't want to share their feelings. Like, you know, if I have a bad day, I live by myself, I'm single, I'm having a girlfriend, have a download, feel better. Men just go in their cave or whatever and don't talk about it, but all the anxiety stats were geared towards women. And I looked at this slide going, what? By the end of it, I felt really depressed, because then it was depression rates, suicide rates, and I was like, no, I am depressed after this hour conference call. But it blew me away that it was women. Anxiety and depression was more geared towards women, and then it obviously talked about suicide rates, which are higher in men. But all the other significant mental illnesses, more women
are experienced
it, and significantly more, like 1 to 3 versus 1 to 5 is nearly double. And I was like, that can't be right, that can't be the stats. But it is.
Did they make a reference to social media?
No.
So I feel that social media, Facebook, Instagram, especially
young girls,
young girls, are just it's all like these influencers.
God, I hate
how many likes I've got, and you know, who's got the perfect life.
Even photoshopped and so
well, and we didn't have that when we were kids. We didn't have the social media bullying. We just had in the playground.
And then photos that they get of the perfect family, like after being, I'm like, geez, like it must have taken you all day to get that one photo. Like, seriously.
And all the filters.
And not reality. You dressed up like that, and you look amazing. How did you do that? That one photo, and then you post it, but then you write how amazing it is, and you've just had a baby, and how fantastic life is, and everything's great. I'm like, that's not true.
And she's got a bikini on and looks like
that's a bad message.
6 weeks after having the child,
I don't have a baby, and I don't have a 6 weeks.
Then everyone else looks at it and they think, well, why am I struggling? And so I shouldn't talk about it. And then they talk about like women's power and like empowering women to do all these things. And I'm like, that's not empowering women. No. You're photoshopping yourself and getting your hair done and looking amazing and not promoting, like it's not reality for everyone.
No.
And it's so detrimental to, it's just, I think
Sorry.
because of our generation, we didn't have to grow up with that. I've totally gone off topic, sorry.
No.
But that, our kids have, like that's going to be their reality, and that's really scary.
And in America particularly, there's been kids that killed themselves because of online bullying.
Yeah, a lot, even locally. Like
here in Australia.
everywhere,
And I think, though, too, that what we're also going to see as we continue to evolve is a lot of people are going to be faced with a different type of caring situation as they get older. They're going to have to look after their elderly parents, right? Not everybody's going to be able to put their parents in a home.
No.
And some people are going to have to be, mom's now living with us. I need to work from home a day. I got to take care of dad. I think that once that starts shifting too, and we have to start looking after them because people are living longer. Dementia's
That's right, and both parents work. It's not
Dementia's
like
actually on the increase, so this is also going to be a problem.
change.
It's another mental health issue that I think that a lot of it will be. I think they're going to recognize it's an environmental thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And the reason that we have problems with kids and drugs and killing themselves is because we're putting it. So really, if you're going to have a kid and you're going to be a parent, be a parent. Be focused on that, growing that human being. And anything I can do to support you. That's why we don't have kids. Never wanted to have kids. Am I happy to pay for public school education? Oh yes. Why? Because you are my retirement plan. So here's your money. Right? No problems at all. Paying for that kind of. Do I need to pay for a playground? Yes. Why? Because I want you kids to be happy and healthy and not actually, destroying things and doing vandalism. So sure, here's my money. I don't have kids, but here's the money.
But I read something a long time ago, because I think I'm the only person that I know that doesn't have kids. That the first 5 years of a children's life is the most formative, and that they are like a sponge and they learn so much. I also read that they learn the most from the parent of the same gender.
Oh, right.
No pressure, being.
Well, and we know that the kids that were adopted onto the Romanian orphanages, when we went through that big cycle, a lot of those kids, something like almost 70% of those kids were traumatized and ended up having serious developmental delay because they didn't get nurtured. And they didn't get cuddled. Kids need contact. They need physical contact with people, and
they need your time as a parent.
Yeah, you need to be focused. And if you don't want to invest, if you don't want to invest in them, then put a cork in it and don't have one.
So I'm a psych major, and I did a lot of child studies. So the first 10 years in child development is actually really important, especially the first 5 years, where you need to develop the attachment you have with the child and the parent. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous. So.
Don't be nervous.
We're going to grade you after.
Say that to your uni lecturer and say that you did okay.
So for attachment, it affects a lot of things in terms of the child's relationship as a person and how they would be with not just their partner, but with interpersonal relationships. So that's why having a parent is so important, that you're there. And I think what you're doing is really great to make sure that everything is, you give them the flow so that they feel like they can be with their child and feel having a sense of achievement at the same time when you're at their age. Clearly, I know nothing much.
That's not true. You're a psych major.
Yeah.
I didn't do very well in my HR degree with psych. So I probably needed you to do my exams.
So yeah, what everyone has said, how a child being what's the word? When they go bad as a teenager, it's because they don't really have the parental support and love that they get.
So that's really interesting, is it? Is there statistics then? Because obviously, the statistics for men now are obviously horrendous, and obviously for women. And traditionally, it would have been the male, the father, out at work and the mum at home. So the children wouldn't have had that attachment to the father the way that a lot of the generation, the dads coming through now are really driving that. They want that bond, they want that attachment. Is there any studies around, fathers being not present at home that perhaps is influencing the rate of mental health illnesses within men today?
If particularly just to the father. There might be, but I'm not too sure of
Yeah.
it. But I do know that, like, heterosexual parents, gay parents, they bring up the child just as well as
Yeah.
heterosexual, maybe even better.
Yeah.
So, like, gender doesn't really matter, but particularly just for the absence of one parent,
Yeah.
I'm not too sure if there is quite a difference.
It's funny because my best friend's got 4 boys.
Yeah.
And they really wanted a girl the first time, and they found out the gender, and they were like devastated. And I was horrified. I was like, "You're having a baby? Who cares?" Like, when they had it, they didn't care. And I was like slapping them around, going, "Don't be stupid. You've got a baby."
Yeah.
And then she had 3 other boys, and I was like, "Did you still want a girl?" She's like, "I wouldn't know what to do with a girl." And her husband is not as close to them as she is, and she's the primary breadwinner, has always worked. And her oldest son had a girlfriend and told her and didn't tell the dad, and said, "Don't tell dad." But came and said, "Hey Mum, I've got this girl, I want to take her on a date. Where do you think I should take her?" And he's 16 now, apparently they've been going out for 2 years. And she's really lovely. But the father had no idea. Because he was 14 and came to the mum like, "Can I have some money for my Opal card and I want to take her on a date. Where should I go?"
How cute.
So cute, but he didn't want his dad to know that he had a date with a girl. He wanted to tell his mum.
That is interesting.
What I liked about what you said was about the flow. Like, there's what you're creating is a structure, and it's not a structure where, like, it's a way for people to start thinking. Like, it's just it triggers them to think about something that they weren't thinking about before, and it's not like you're like amending an existing process. You're actually putting something there that wasn't there before. And I think that in itself, that whole idea of actually just bringing something in where there was nothing, has a lot of potential as far as changing the way organisations operate with this sort of stuff, which is really cool.
And Rebecca, how do you get your clients, I guess? So you obviously had to start from nothing.
Yeah.
Do you go to companies and present your ideas and try and get them on board, or?
It's just through conversations. I'm lucky that I've worked obviously in recruitment in Sydney, so I have a really good network. And I think it's a moment in time where parental leave really is on the agenda. There's a lot of companies really wanting to move to policies which are inclusive, which is really, really important, not just because fathers want to be more involved in parenting, but because of what that enables women to do and achieve. Because that will enable more women to get back into the workforce. It will enable more women to earn more money, so we can begin to close the super gap. So it enables. There's lots of bigger picture things that I think it can achieve, but it's at the moment it's just through And I don't know what the bigger marketing strategy will be at this stage.
Probably need to hire some more people to do
I
that.
definitely would need to hire people. Yes.
We've got a really good marketing person on the market.
She's done.
Exclusive.
Hired.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
And it would help Maybe,
Thank you.
No, but it's true. It is. It's a really exciting, obviously, as you see, Pete and I are quite talkative.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting area for me as well. But I get a little bit overly interested in this sort of stuff. I was the guy in the mothers groups who only turned up. I was the only guy who turned up.
Yeah. But we need to break down those barriers. We need to make men being fathers just openly accepted.
Yeah.
They shouldn't feel that they can't ask for flexibility. Women at home have to have those conversations with their partners. We do have a gender pay gap, and generally it is men that are the primary breadwinners, which means women are the ones that have to either stay at home or take part-time work or do other things with their career, which means they earn less, which means that impacts their super. There are obviously cases where women are now becoming the breadwinner, and that in itself is causing some organisations real challenges, because when that woman decides to go back to work, if the partner is in that organisation, they then become, I guess, less vocal at home, and they have become the ones that need to ask for flexibility. because they're actually not the breadwinner anymore. So it's the woman at home saying, well, you need to ask for this flexibility. Because I'm the breadwinner.
Okay with not being the primary breadwinner.
Yeah, so there's so many challenges.
They want to provide and they want to be the breadwinner.
Yeah.
I think that all depends on the women, as in where they're placed in their career. I had a business partner, had a baby, and a week later was back at work.
Oh, God.
And the husband became the house dad for the next 5 years.
1 week later, she went back to work.
Yeah.
But also, sometimes, like, and the majority of the time, it's largely a financial decision around who is the breadwinner, right? But again, like working for money, is that ideal? Because you might have someone that's not the primary earner, might only earn 2/3 of what the other person earns, but really wants to get back into, has that real sort of drive and wants to be in the career, and the other person might earn more money, but might be really cool with just
being a parent.
It's really
staying at home, separating from.
But when you've got a mortgage, and
that's
you've
what
got
we're
a
saying. You've got to
child,
make,
and
so
you're
you
paying,
make your decisions around
Yeah,
it.
and
So
you'll
with
get-
Carly and her husband.
and your income's $60,000 a year.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah,
hard.
Absolutely, that's what I'm saying. Like,
And you live
in reality, most of the time that is going to be a very large part of that conversation.
Yeah.
But
and it's because we don't have the support systems, that net that allows people to stay at home and do that sort of stuff.
And I think
make that choice.
as well, people don't like the thing that I really like about the idea of getting more fathers involved in this. Like I was very involved in the whole process from when we found out she was pregnant.
And before that as well.
I was. Well, maybe not me. No. But that being involved in that really and seeing what happened in those even just the first 3 months, because I remember we got 3 days in with Louis. I actually remember lying in bed thinking, I don't know why everyone thinks this is so hard.
No, because it's the first 4 weeks. So my husband was home for the first 4 weeks, and then it's just overnight. So he came home after that, cruising home, and it just changed overnight. I was like, oh my gosh, it's not like it was anymore.
And I think a lot of men, literally, you don't know what you don't know, and if you're not there, you don't know what is.
An account can't be.
Might put your feet under the table.
Hey, you know how you're talking before about females being the breadwinner and no support from the government. I'm the breadwinner in the family, and the main breadwinner, I should say. When I went on maternity leave last time, a 2-year-old, I was $50 over the threshold, and I'm the main breadwinner.
Oh God!
My husband probably earned less than half of what I earn, and there was no scale. There was nothing. I got nothing from the government.
What, for maternity? Nothing. So I didn't either. So I knew, going into this pregnancy, we had to save.
Yeah.
So before we fell pregnant, we fell pregnant. So we had a really tight budget, and we just saved, because I wasn't going to get maternity leave, and I wasn't going to get any assistance from the government. I sat on the phone many times on Centrelink just trying.
For 3 hours on hold.
Yeah. I tried on numerous occasions, because I'm like, maybe.
I know how it works. 4 hours.
But we had to save money, and even in terms of, like I said, with maternity leave, I thought we budgeted, and I thought 6 months max, and then it pushed out to 14 months. But it came to a point where we were we knew we could survive. So once we had Ruby, our daughter, we had to weigh up what was more important, and even if it took us however many years to get back to the position of where we were before we had her, we had to make that decision as a family. And that's just what you have to do.
I think we got $2,000.
We got nothing.
That was from that was like a rebate for something.
I got it for the boys because it wasn't means tested then.
You what?
I got it for the boys because it wasn't means tested then. I think it was $5,000 each.
And you got a lump sum payment as soon as you popped the kid out, didn't you?
Yeah, it was $5,000.
Because that's why there's so many single mothers in Western Sydney, because they want
because you can live on $5,000 for so long.
Because they bought TVs or something, didn't they?
Don't have twins because the second one doesn't exist. Oh,
Really?
You get a rebate for the first
That was
child.
Serious?
Should be each
How
child.
does that even
Like,
make sense?
I don't.
I mean, it's
So it's like my second.
So then it's not about the
They're
child.
actually getting.
It's not about the
Make it
child, it's about
Just
the
the
pregnancy.
pregnancy.
It's not about the child at all, obviously.
Wow.
Who's the Minister for Women Affairs?
Wasn't it Grainger?
I know, right? And do you know what? This makes me crazy because he has daughters.
Yes.
And it's
they're
like-
they're amazing.
What'd you say?
They're amazing.
Yeah, so
Sister's quite
you know,
That's because he hasn't been
talk to each
around that.
Yeah.
well, when people are in power, whether they're in businesses or government, and they're not doing things, and they have daughters, and they're not, implementing policies or creating cultures that are supportive of women, equal pay, all of these, parental leave pay and things like that. I just don't understand how you can be a father
His ego's
and not be driving equality across the board.
And your children wouldn't be respecting you. Imagine going
Yeah.
to 3 daughters and they're like, "Oh, Dad, like you just rejected this policy." Like he would not be popular at home, would he? That'd be
You
like,
think so, right? Yeah.
But it probably, that's probably where the whole, just totally not even being on the same page as what's going on at home. Probably had no idea.
Yeah, zero bond or connection with your
The
children.
only reason he's got nice daughters is because he wasn't around.
Yeah, because the wife did the work.